Good evening and welcome to the 15th episode of the Rangers Gameplan podcast, where we discuss the past, in this case, 4 games that were the New York Rangers. We have 3 really exciting games to talk about, and one that made me want to jump off of a bridge.
Yeah. The last time we were on here, we talked about the Columbus game. We definitely had a lot to say there, and then obviously Arizona, Nashville, Seattle, and Calgary have happened since then. Like you said, 3 of those were phenomenal. One of them was not so great. Obviously in Nashville, they looked like they didn't even show up for that. The one thing I will say, there's nothing in that game that I could say that the other 3 games didn't disprove. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Now, this is just me going off the pictures that I saw on social media. I'm not sure if it actually happened. I'm 99% sure the New York Rangers had their team Halloween party the day before the Nashville game, or I guess the night before. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but I just think being that one game is the only outlier, I'm willing to say they were probably pretty hungover.
I really hope that is the... Not because, that was such a bad game, I can't stomach the thought of that being not the reason, but that would just be... The thought of playing in Madison Square Garden in front of 20,000 with a ringing hangover just...
Yeah, that game was not fun. I guess, first of all, we'll just start off by, talking about the Arizona game, obviously the home opener. I thought they played terrific in that one.
Yeah.
I think they got goalied a little bit, for sure. Connor Ingram I don't know what he was on that game. Right off the top of my head, there was the beautiful diving pad save on Zibanejad on the power play. That was ridiculous. That was like elite level goaltending right there, and he definitely made several of those types of saves throughout the game. So, I mean, and not to mention, I do think Arizona has vastly improved this year. I think I was saying that even before the game when we were on here. They have some good players. Yeah. They really do. And I think that power play is lethal. And the one other thing I will say, I mean, they look great right now, and obviously things could change, and I'm not expecting them to be a playoff team. I don't think anybody is. So who knows? It could very well snowball for them. They have, after all, been the Arizona Coyotes, for many, many years. I think the last time they really came close to anything was when Shane Doan was on the team and in his prime, which I believe was like 2011. So it's been a minute. So I wouldn't doubt it if they end up bottoming out at some point. The reason I'm saying that is because this is kind of the worst time of year to play bad teams because they don't know they're bad yet. Yep. So like the morale is still high. I think that was like the second game of the season for them. Yeah. So like I said, I think they have vastly improved this year, but regardless if they keep it up or not, this is definitely the worst time of the year to play a team like that. Thankfully they won it, but they're still playing for something. It's not like they're down in the dumps, so a 2-1 win in which you got goalied and the other team played very well defensively, I'm not upset with. And the other thing I want to bring up, that was a surprisingly violent game.
Yeah.
For considering it's a Rangers-Coyotes game, I didn't expect to see that much beef. Yeah, I really didn't.
I was kind of slack-jawed, especially at the end of that, where the big scrum really breaks out, and I think everyone on the ice caught some kind of a penalty. And because for a moment I'm just staring at it, I'm like, when was the last time these two teams played any meaningful game against each other? And it's never.
I don't know if there was one.
There has never been a meaningful game. But for some reason, they picked that night. And the Coyotes, and I'm going to say the same thing about the Predators as well when we get into that game. The Coyotes are not a great team this year. But they're not the trash heap they have been in the past few seasons. I think Connor Ingram is a pretty solid goaltender. I think he's going to continue to do that. Logan Cooley just looks like Himothy defined.
Yeah, for sure.
Already, he looks fantastic. And it's like you said, it's still very early on. Everyone still has that preseason hope of like, well, it's 0-0. Why not us? Mm-hmm. And they came in, and I think even in a loss, they made a pretty good statement for themselves because the Rangers... they've looked great to start the season off.
Oh, yeah.
With
yeah.
2 slight outliers. And they came in and hung for the entire of that, every second of that game. You go into the third period tied 1 apiece. And yeah, a lot of that was Connor Ingram looking fantastic. Their defense played a solid game. Their offense had really good chances. Shesterkin also had a few moments to shine in that game against Arizona. They came in and they played the Rangers closer than other playoff teams. I think Buffalo is going to be a playoff team. They were very good last year. We killed them 5-1. You have Seattle, who was a playoff team last year, and they got bodied 4-1 by Jonathan Quick.
Yeah.
And you had Calgary, who is supposedly, again, supposed to be a playoff team with a lot of upside. There's a lot of expectation in Calgary right now. And they lose 3-1. The Coyotes held their own, and I think they have a lot of good takeaways from that. I do have a dumb question for you on the big skirmish at the end. Which person in a fight shocked you more, Igor Shesterkin or Mika Zibanejad, who big brothered? I can't remember off the top of my head who it was.
Without a
Sean
doubt, Mika
Jersey.
Zibanejad. Mika Zibanejad for sure, 1,000%, because Igor has shown many, many, many times a lot of feistiness, and I didn't expect Zibanejad to even come in contact with anybody unless he was like pulling someone away from the scrum. I didn't expect him to actually get involved. Real quick, this is completely off topic. The Devils and Capitals are playing tonight.
Yep.
I have the game on the TV next to me. There is a sign with a Rangers logo on it next to Luke Hughes right now during the warm-ups. I don't know what it says. I just think that's insane. That we don't play for a month. Are we? Anyway, back to whatever we're talking about. I just wanted to bring that up. We don't play for a month. They're playing the Capitals. And then, like that. Oh my God, that is literally the most.
Rangers?
This is the most rent-free thing I've ever seen. Jesus.
That dude wakes up and just sees a Rangers player as he closes his eyes and has visions.
I just wanted to mention that before I forget.
Incredible.
Anyway, back to all that. Yeah. Yeah, Mika, I can't recall the last time I've seen him really. I mean, I have seen him, have words with players and get feisty in that way, but in terms of actually joining in on a scrum like that and being completely away from it and fighting someone is, I mean, not to make it seem like he was Ryan Reeves or anything, but that was just so out of character for him. And that's the other thing when I'm talking about, like, I didn't expect that much beef in that game because, listen, if Mika Zibanejad is fighting, there had to be a lot of things going on. I'd assume happened is something, that final face-off, I assume something was said on that last face-off. Or maybe not, maybe there was just a whole lot of shit talk going on the whole game. But I mean, that came out of nowhere, and there was a lot of feistiness in that game. Yeah, I mean, the one other thing I will mention is, like, with Igor, obviously hockey culture is very, get off my goalie, all that stuff. With him, it's like he does this to himself. So I don't even, like, get super amped up when, like, he's, like, tussling with someone because most of the time he started it. So like, I know some people are like, I don't know if you saw either. Sean Avery went on this, like, massive rant about the Rangers because Igor was in the middle of that, and he, I guess, wanted, like, a full-on line brawl. He's, listen, I used to love Sean Avery. He's just become a complete moron, so we're going to ignore that. Listen, Igor, 9 times out of 10, he's the one that started it. So I just think it's hilarious. Like, he was... Like, he's celebrating the victory, and he saw something going on. He's like, oh, like, I'm bored. I want to get in on this. And, yeah, it obviously wasn't, like, a crazy fight from him or anything. I just think it was so funny.
I need you to understand that this is how it's written in the game notes. 20 minutes, you have all the other penalties, game misconduct, roughing, cross-check, whatever. Igor Shesterkin, 2 minutes for goaltender interference.
Yeah, they. I don't know if they misclicked on the penalties for that or so. That does not make any sense.
It was goalie interference, but not that they interfered with the goalie. It was.
Yeah.
He decided to go over and start throwing blockers, which.
That is funny. Yeah. But I mean, back to that game. I think, like I said, I believe the only goal in that game was Clayton Keller, if I'm not mistaken, or the only goal
Pretty
against, I should say.
positive you're correct. Yes, it was a power play for Clayton Keller
Yeah.
from.
So I have defended that guy up and down, pretty much
Yep.
since he was, on Team USA for the World Juniors. I think he is a phenomenal player.
Mm.
And I think, like you mentioned before, Logan Cooley looks 1,000% ready to play at this level. I don't know his exact stats on the year or anything, but I mean, he's making no-look passes already, like behind the back, cross-ice, no-look passes, and they're connecting. He's 1,000% ready. I think those two together are really going to be special.
Five
But I
points
mean,
in 6 games so far for Logan Cooley.
yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was a little bit skeptical because originally he was gonna go back and play college for another year, and he went back on his decision and decided to go to the NHL. And I didn't know if he was quite ready for it. Just because I mean, he's a 100% skill guy, and that doesn't always translate right away. But for him, it's obviously working great. Like I said, if your only goal against is Clayton Keller, who is one of the premier players in this league on what has been one of the worst teams in the league for a few years, I'm not upset about it. I think especially when we're talking about the couple outliers the Rangers have had this year for the losses. I think both of them really just boiled down to them getting away from their system and not playing within it, and we've seen what happens. But I think I mean, how many wins? Is it every single win that the Rangers have only allowed one goal?
Yes.
I think that, yeah. So, I mean, when they play within their system, they're fantastic. Obviously, you go from that Arizona game to Nashville. And like I said, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm 99% sure that they had, that they had some beverages the night before, and they had their team Halloween party. Just based on what I was seeing on the players' stories and stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, if that's the worst game of the season, I'm willing to chalk it up to that. If there were multiple games so far that looked like that, then I'm not willing to say that. But Nashville is a good thing, a very good team. Saros is still, phenomenal. So
Saros,
obviously you would have liked them to get up for that game a little bit more, but I'm considering everything else we've seen, I'm not upset about it.
yeah, the thing for me is I understand that they're not as good as they were a few seasons ago. I still think Nashville is a serious team. I really like Roman Josi.
Yeah.
I love Ryan McDonough, obviously. That's shocker there.
Yeah.
I am a big believer that Ryan O'Reilly still has good hockey left in him, and he scored one of the goals against the Rangers in that game. He already has 4 points, 2 of them being goals for them, as a supposed second line center, if I'm not mistaken, currently. And UC Saros is
so. Yeah.
And UC Saros is phenomenal. He is one of the
you're not going to beat him if you don't, if you play like the Rangers did in that game. It's just not going to happen. He's one of those goalies that if you're not giving him, if you're not testing him, he's not really going to let in softies. He's one of the best in the league. So
yeah, I really think the top shelf is probably Sorokin, Shesterkin, Vasilevsky, unless it's blocker side, and Saros.
Yeah. No, I've definitely been a big Saros guy for a while. And to talk about Nashville, they don't look necessarily fantastic on paper, but I do think they have good leadership there. And I mean, listen, Josi is right up there with Adam Fox and Makar. Saros is obviously right up there with all the other goalies. They do have a lot of talent. And by the way, that Philip Forsberg goal was ridiculous. It was absurd. So I think he's got a lot of hockey left in him, just like O'Reilly. And I think honestly, I think Ryan O'Reilly being there is great for them because I mean he is known as one of the best leaders in the league. So obviously that only goes so far. But I mean if he's still got a lot left in the tank and he clearly still wants to win, I do expect them to be a playoff team again. When when you're most likely playing hungover and you don't really get up for the game, that's what's going to happen against a team like that. So, like I said, there's nothing. There's really no point in even going crazy analyzing that game too much because the rest of the games have just disproven everything we saw in that game. And especially after all of the players and Laviolette were, saying like, listen, that's not us. And they come out against Seattle and completely dominate.
Yep.
Basically the whole game. Obviously, you had the one goal given up, but I'm gonna chalk that up to. By the way, it was a late night game, so some people might not have watched it. The lights were not working in one end of the rink for the entire game.
Yeah.
So the one goal given up was a one-timer against our backup goalie, who most likely could not see the puck.
Yep.
So outside of that, they completely dominated the game.
So, fun fact, 4 of the 5 goals in that game were in the dark end.
Yeah, not surprising.
Yeah. It's incredible that seeing the black puck actually helps you to stop the black puck.
Yeah.
Side note, the fact that the referees mutually decided, let's just make it shitty for everyone, was fantastic. I love that that's
apparently
the solution.
there were talks about postponing the game.
The fact that instead of postponing it or just trying to get the lights to work, and they're just like, nah, just make it suck for everybody. That works. That is the most quintessential NHL call I have ever heard in my life.
Yeah, they switch sides every 10 minutes of the period. It was definitely a weird one. Like you said, four out of the 5 goals happened in the dark end of the ice. So, I guess everything outside of that, obviously a rough night for the goalies. The Rangers completely dominated that game. And the one thing that I do definitely want to bring up, and we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but there were only 2 games, so we weren't sure. The second line looks ridiculously good right now. Top in the league, ridiculous, unbelievable right now. Obviously, the rest of the team does. But I mean, they look to be completely clicking. Obviously, it is still a very small sample size. They could go cold, but I mean, considering the players you have on that line, it's just the creativity that they feed off of each other is. I cannot believe that line was not put together for 2 seasons under Mr. Gallant. It's mind blowing.
They look so comfortable after. They looked comfortable the first game. The fact that you have gotten, and the Gallant went to the blender so much in his 2 years here. I'm amazed that he didn't just even luck into that line.
Yeah, he would just shuffle them up. I can't believe he didn't put that together by accident. It's unbelievable.
They look great. Panarin looks back to his 2019-20 self.
Yeah, he's ridiculous.
Heedle's an unbelievable playmaker all of a sudden. He's looking fantastic.
6 points. 6 points so far. He hasn't scored yet.
No.
He hasn't scored a goal yet. He has 6 points in 6 games.
And some of those assists are almost better than the goals. It's insane. Kakko had a nice goal where he just net front guy being a pain. I think it's funny that the Rangers have 2 net front guys on the same line that just do it in such different ways with him and Kreider. Loff had a goal in that game. Loff also had a goal last night, which we'll talk about. I also want to talk about the second defensive pair. Trouba and Miller have looked fantastic.
Oh yeah. Not that they have never looked like that before, but I mean, so far every game, I just have no complaints whatsoever.
I think the Rangers might be the first team in the league, or the only team in the league this season, where the second line and the second pair are the best of both of those things.
Yeah.
And that's not to discredit Fox and Lindgren. They look good, but holy God.
Yeah, I really have no complaints about any of the lines or D pairings so far. But yeah, I mean, Trouba and Miller have looked just completely lights out. And like I mentioned before, the only time, the only games that they've looked like a mess are when they haven't played within their system. They've shown, obviously, they're playing the 1-3-1 now. Not that is like a completely uncounterable thing, but I just think it allows the Rangers to be very tough in the neutral zone. And when you have, arguably the best goalie in the world, it is going to bode very, very well for you. I think once they're fully acclimated to this system, I think they can beat anybody Like, seriously. And I obviously, listen, they haven't even played 10 games yet. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few games this year where we want to tear our hair out. But it's just, and not to, I don't want to sit, we've talked about Gerard Gallant at length every single episode so far. I don't want to spend too much time talking about a coach that is no longer in our lives. But it's crazy the difference we're seeing. Especially, I mean, even if you want to talk about, last night in Calgary real quick, the first 10 minutes were brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And if Gallant was a coach, that would have snowballed and they lose that game. 100%. So
Bonino
even in the Seattle game, there's a potential of that.
Bonino would have been centering Kako and Trocheck on the first line somehow.
Yeah. and that's the thing. Like, we're not seeing, the lines get blended up anymore. He's not, Laviolette is not trying to make adjustments by shaking the lines up. He's talking to the players and making adjustments that way and correcting things that they're doing. He's not just blending the lines up and hoping for a power play like we've seen for the past 2 seasons. They would look like a complete disaster until they got a power play and scored and then just somehow win the game. I mean, all of last year, it's like we would, obviously since we started doing this in the episodes we did from last season, it's like every time we would come on and it's like, oh, they won some games. Somehow they won them. It wasn't fun to watch, but they did. And we tried to buy ourselves into, them going all the way, but it's not possible without a system. And we've said it multiple times, but like Gallant did nothing, man. He did nothing. There was listen, the only difference between Gallant's team and David Quinn's team is that with David Quinn, Igor Shesterkin was not literally the second coming of Christ yet. The power play was still terrific. But that's it. David Quinn, his teams were just as bad defensively. Everything. It's just that, Igor came along and won a Vezina, and they went all the way to the conference finals and all that stuff. But Gallant literally did not fix anything with this team. We have a coach now that actually motivates them, and I've only heard great things from the players about him, and even past players that have played for Laviolette. They have nothing but phenomenal things to say about them. He speaks from his heart. It's not like he gives these cheesy speeches or anything. He's very well respected, and the vibe around this team is much, much different this year. So, that just goes on my coaching spiel. We just said, I can't believe Panarin, Hedel, and Laugh was never put together for the past 2 seasons. That is looking terrific, and you have, regardless of if you want to be a Rangers hater or not, and I know some people still, for some reason, hate Jacob Trouba's guts. Regardless of all that, this is one of the best defensive cores in the league. At least 25 teams would kill to have this group. And being that they've always had talent, we have a Norris-winning defenseman. Lindgren is what he is. He's literally a rock. Miller has so much upside. Trouba is pretty much exactly what you want out of just like a lockdown physical defenseman. And now I think obviously Braden Schneider, he's not phenomenal, but he's still young. He gets the job done. He's very solid. And this is the first year in many years that we have a capable 6th defenseman. And now they're all playing under a legit defensive system. So, like I said, I think once they're fully acclimated to this and this system becomes completely instinctual to them, I think the sky is the limit for this team.
At what point do we begin the Eric Gustafson for Norris conversation?
Yeah, and we said it when he was signed too. He was probably going to be the best acquisition, and he has been terrific.
Here's the
so
thing.
Yeah,
I thought when he was brought on by the Rangers, I thought he would be the best acquisition because he would be the least bad of the acquisitions. Mm-hmm. I did not expect him to look this good at both ends. Yeah. He's been really good offensively. I have not noticed him defensively, and that is the best compliment I can give to a 6th defenseman. I have not noticed.
Yeah. Considering we've had quite a few 6th defensemen over the past few years that they do things that make me scream at the TV. So he's not doing that. And I just want to mention real quick, like I've seen a lot of, Braden Schneider hate. Maybe not a lot, but I feel like he's been the odd man out, especially in the two losses. You could probably say like Columbus might have been his worst game in the league, like as in his career so far, and he's 3 years in.
Yeah.
So that is, I'm not going to complain, guys. I think, the two losses so far have just been a team wide thing, and I think Braden Schneider has tremendous upside. I think Jacob Trouba being there on this team for him to learn from is perfect because he plays the same way. So the more experience he gets, he could very well end up becoming the exact same player as Jacob Trouba. I have no complaints about any of the lines or D pairs, and not to mention, when we're talking about this system and everything, the Seattle game, it's really impressive they locked them down like that, especially when you have your backup goalie in. I was going into that game, I was like, listen, if they lose this and, let's say they lose like 5-3 or something, 5-4, and it's because your backup goalie's in, not that I'd be okay with it necessarily, but it's almost expected. They gave Seattle nothing the whole game. That was tremendously impressive. And obviously, we haven't talked about Jonathan Quick yet. He did make some great saves in that game. I just want to say, like, it's not like he wasn't tested at all. He made some terrific saves there. And I just want to say, like, that is what he's capable of. Not to say he's in his prime or anything, but I know there's going to be games, and this fan base loves to rag on the backup goalies. Listen. He's just shown you that if you play well in front of him, he's not going to sell the game. So if we're getting outshot like 20-2 in a period at any point, and he gives up 3 goals, I don't want to hear any Jonathan Quick hate, because last year everybody hated Halak. Same thing with Georgiev. It just keep going down the line of backup goalies. I don't want to see that for this guy, especially with the expectations I have for how this team should play. If he's going to get lit up, it's because the team is playing god awful.
Yeah. You bring up exactly what I wanted to get into, which was talking about the goaltenders to this point. Jonathan Quick made a couple of really good saves. The power play glove stop, the windmill that he gave.
Yeah.
That is playing on repeat in my mind since that moment in time. He looked good. I didn't realize, and I really should have, but usually when I look at him, I just see through red glasses with my awful hate of him for the events of 2014. He is such a good positioning goaltender. It has never hit me how rock solid his fundamentals are. He's looked good. The defense in front of it, Shesterkin hasn't had to steal you a game yet. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I understand you might look at the Arizona game and say it was 2-1. That was stolen with the... was it the Arizona game that he had the stop on the penalty shot? I believe.
Yes. Yeah, that was.
That was the closest, but even then, I didn't feel Arizona... It wasn't that they were peppering shots where it was, 40-20. If that was the case, I would say, yeah, he stole you that game. That was a good team game where they had some really high-danger chances. But we haven't seen those games yet for Shesterkin this year, which last year we had already seen a few at this point, and the year before that the same goes, where you get outshot 38-22 in a game, and you somehow manage to win it 4-2 or 4-1, and Shesterkin just had to make a year's worth of highlight saves in one period to even keep you relevant in the game.
Yeah.
The defense is actually playing like a defense in front of him, and it's a wild thing to see. He's looked good. Quick looked fantastic in his game. I know he only faced 19 shots. The defense is going to make Shesterkin so much better this season. And you saw that last night against Calgary, where I thought the defense played well against Calgary. Shesterkin still made a few stupid saves.
Yeah.
We gush endlessly about his blocker, about how he slides around the crease, about his glove. His legs, his pads are such an underappreciated part of his game. You cannot muscle him to a puck. Like, if his leg is outstretched, the puck is on his pad, you're not getting it past him. You can't just shove it home. And that is something that, especially once you get towards the playoffs. And I don't mean any slander at all, because absolute hero of the franchise, the best goaltender to play to them. There have been a lot of those playoff goals that are heartbreaking goals where it's around the pads and it's shoved underneath them. And that just happens in every playoff run. That's not even exclusive to Henrik by any means. But those moments stick in my mind when I'm thinking about the strong leg that's keeping it out. And when I discuss playoff goals, the past few games, especially in Seattle and Calgary, the Rangers have not particularly scored a lot of beautiful, beautiful goals where you have Panarin cruising in. Panarin had a couple of really nice goals against Seattle, so using him as an example probably isn't great. It's not a star player plowing through an entire defense, turnstiling two defensemen, and then undressing the goaltender. It's just good positioning. It's the fundamentals of hockey that, in my mind, because we've seen a dozen goals to this point of the season, all three last night against Calgary were not really highlight goals. I mean, any goal where your team ties, takes the lead, or goes ahead in a game is obviously exciting and going to get me out of my seat. But none of those goals were like, oh, I can't wait to see the replay of it. It was...
Yeah, they definitely just got it done. That's all that it was, pretty much.
It's seeing a coach that actually is preaching fundamentals to a team and not just, let's hope the high-end talent bails us out, and when it doesn't, I'm going to blend every single line into oblivion. And so it sounds dumb, but seeing goals that are actually easy to, like, break down and digest, and not just, well, Panarin went in and did it all on his own to tie this game.
Yeah.
Refreshing.
Yeah, and real quick to when we're talking about the goalies, the one thing that I do want to bring up is Henrik Lundqvist has said many times that Igor Shesterkin is better fundamentally and positionally as a goaltender than he was. I mean, obviously he's a goddamn first ballot Hall of Famer. So it's not a slight on him to any extent, but he was more, he would get caught out of position at times and he would make a ridiculous diving save. That was his game a little bit more. He just never gave up on the play, and that's why you saw so many diving saves by Hank many times. But obviously it's one of those things where, what do you expect him to say? He's not going to be like, oh yeah, I was 10 times better than Igor. But you can tell when anytime I've seen him speak about Igor, he breaks down the film and he just says, listen, I've never been this good positionally as a goalie. Obviously, I had great instincts and things like that, but Igor is usually, when he's on his game, he's just phenomenal fundamentally at his position. And obviously, when we talk about the goals that have been scored so far, it's a matter of, last year they definitely looked at times like they were always looking for the perfect shot. And to speak on that a little bit, Filipino has talked to the media about him talking to the team, saying like, listen, this is we're a really good team, and he's trying to get them to understand that just shoot the puck because any of them could go in. That's something that, many times last year you would see the Rangers just get stonewalled because they're afraid to shoot and to take a chance. I haven't really seen that this year. It's like, yeah, it might not always be the perfect grade A scoring chance, but they still just shoot it. And obviously, Filipino seems way more outspoken this year, from what I've seen. I mean, he's giving speeches to the team now, things like that. But the main thing that stood out to me is him just talking to the guys, saying like, listen, enough of the cute stuff. And, great teams are always going to find ways to score goals unless we kind of prevent it. I mean, if the other team's playing good defense and you're just waiting for the perfect shot, you're going to lose the game. Like these are basically his words. And we've seen that. Like you said last night, it was they just got the job done. It's not like they were just sitting there passing and passing and being way too cute in the neutral zone and giving the puck over many times like we saw last year. That just hasn't been the case. And obviously, to talk about Panarin a little bit, he's obviously been terrific this year, and I think he's got more to his game, because right now I think he's got 8 points in 6 games, and he's going to have quite a few games this year where, he always does have multi-point nights. So like you said real early on, this is the best he's looked since 1920 probably. And if he could keep rolling, I I'm very excited to see what his point total on the year is. Obviously, the main concern with him is what's going to happen after the regular season. But we'll get to that at some point. I just think the difference with him is Laviolette has said many times, like, when 10 is going, he plays, and he's not that he's necessarily completely relying on him any game or anything, but in the nights so far that you've seen Panarin with just the utmost confidence, he gets double shifted, and Laviolette just lets him ride. And I think with Gallant, it was almost like Panarin was trapped, and obviously there wasn't much of a system in place, and he was just kind of trying to fit in this like box that Gallant had him in. And obviously he still had a great regular season last year, but so far this year it's just Laviolette is preaching that he wants his skill guys to be creative in the offensive zone, and it's working out phenomenally. Like we've mentioned, the second line has looked just stupid good so far, but obviously, aside from the goals they have scored, there's been quite a few chances they've had this season where it's a phenomenal pass cross ice, and it's either a great save or it misses the net by a little bit. They've had way more chances than they have, goals so far on the year. Every shift it looks like they are just on it, and like I said, it's definitely quite a small sample size. But they've just been completely rolling. And I think the scary part for other teams is I don't really think the first line has gotten going too much. And with that being said, Kako's looked great. All of those guys have looked great individually. I think Mika has 5 assists on the year so far in 6 games.
So. That sounds pretty
So
right.
it's not like he's been cold or anything like that. Kreider's obviously still doing his thing. But just as a line together, they haven't gotten going yet. And I'm 100% confident they will. So if your top 6 is playing to their ceiling, this is going to be a very, very fun year.
Yeah, Zibanejad has 5 assists through 6 games, and this is a guy who is good for at least 30 goals a year.
Yeah.
He's gonna get clicking. I look at the season like 2021-22, the shortened season, where he finished with 24 goals and didn't even start actually scoring until like halfway through.
Yeah.
If it takes him 20 games to get in, I really hope it doesn't. But if it takes him a few games to get settled in with the new top line, I think it's fine. Also, I wouldn't be shocked, with that being said, if you see a crazy boost in assists for Mika Zibanejad this season, because Kreider and Kakko are such good finishing guys and 2 net front guys. I still think Mika scores 30. But I want to find his career high in assists, because, it's 52 assists is his career high. I could really see a reality where he cracks 60 assists. I just...
Yeah, especially because, they've been vastly improved 5-on-5 so far. The past 2 years, it's like, unless the Rangers had a power play, I was like on the edge of my seat begging them to get the puck out. That hasn't been the case this year, so I think with the uptick in 5-on-5 play, he's going to get a lot more points in that department, and obviously the power play has been great so far, and they will continue to be great. I would not be surprised if he hits something like that. Obviously, it's very easy for us to sit here and say all this very early in the season, but I just have not seen this fundamentally sound level of hockey from this team in quite some time.
Well, the biggest thing,
yeah, go ahead.
The biggest thing for me is it's sustainable. They're not playing games where it's wildly over their head, which has been an issue for a very long time. This is, and I know people get annoyed when you might say it, this is playoff-style goals, it's playoff-style defense, and Shesterkin's marvelous. He's proven that he can do it in the postseason anyway. It's playoff goaltending, where you're getting a lot of shots, but a lot of them are just easy dump-ins to get rid of, to lock you in, and then you can make that ridiculous save where you have to steal a goal for your team. What they're doing right now is sustainable in the playoffs, because it's fun to watch a player go sicko mode and tear through an entire defense. That doesn't happen. The Eric Gustafsson goal last night, where he just pounces on a loose puck in the crease that sneaks past Markstrom, that's going to happen in the playoffs. Goals where it's a drive-by by Alexei Lafreniere or a really, really good tip by Kreider, those happen in the playoff because it's a simple little breakdown from the other team and you're in perfect position.
Mm-hmm.
This is finally looking like, yes, this is something I can see continuing for a long stretch and not just a flash in the pan, which Gallant was just banking, it seems from my... It's easy, again, to say this as a armchair coach. It seemed like he was just banking on the hot streak coming in May and June. And if it didn't, it was cooked. And last year, the hot streak didn't come in May, and they were cooked.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, my thing with all that is I 1000% agree that this is definitely sustainable for a couple reasons. I mean, we've talked so many times that they're playing under a great system now, and they seem to be just bought into it perfectly. The other thing is the face-offs. I forget the exact stat off the top of my head, but this is the best the Rangers have been, I believe, percentage-wise, or maybe in terms of league standings for face-offs since 2019.
Oh.
That's not. I mean, they've been bad on face-offs for some time now, and the players have talked about how the coaches are helping them with that. And the reason I'm bringing all that up is because obviously we've seen how bad they are, you know, in their own zone the past couple of years and 5-on-5 the past couple of years. And when you're not good at face-offs and you can't get the puck out, that's when you're. That's when terrible things happen, because how many games have we seen where they cannot get the puck out of their own zone and they look like a complete disaster because it starts from you losing the faceoff and you're not structurally good enough to consistently get the puck out. So that is why I believe this is completely sustainable, especially because, like you mentioned before, it's not like all these goals are just complete highlight reel, you know, stunning goals. They're getting these, you know, gritty goals and everything like that. And like I said, they've been really bad at faceoffs for quite some time. So and by the way, I think having Lafreniere be as good at faceoffs as he's been this year is huge, because obviously Panarin that's never been his thing. But in the case where Hedl gets thrown out of the faceoff circle or something, you have another guy there. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the players have talked at length about how the coaches have really honed in on that and helped them work on that. And like I said, it's vastly different from what we've seen the past 2 years, because they can win faceoffs. They're playing within a system, and they're able to play 60 minutes of hockey for the first time since I don't even remember.
I'm still trying to go back and find the last time the face-off percentage has been as good as it has, but they are playing great in the neutral zone. There was obviously the shot last night by, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head all of a sudden, good lord, where he was left just completely alone in front. Blake Coleman.
Okay, yeah,
but that was it. That was... I am used to seeing a person left that wide open alone in front of Shesterkin virtually twice a period for the past while.
Yeah, and that's on like a good night.
Yeah,
and listen, it might sound like we're being dramatic and whatnot, but like if you watch some of the games from the past 2 years, it was not pretty at all. Like, this is not an exaggeration. They legitimately had periods and games where they looked like a lottery team, and it was completely unacceptable considering you have the personnel that you do on this team. So like I said, I think they've just completely bought into this, and now this is complete just, you know, fan talk, but the vibes with this team seem completely different. I mean, even listen, you know, even after the game in Calgary last night, I thought they played a great game. The players were saying, you know, we didn't think we went full throttle, all that stuff. I didn't really see them be that hard on themselves in the past 2 years. I mean, obviously at times they would say, you know, we think we could have been better, all that stuff, but they just keep saying that they have another level to go to, and the Seattle game was the only one where I think they were truly pretty satisfied.
Yeah.
But I think that comes from the coaches. Like, hey, listen, you know, our goalie had to make one too many phenomenal saves tonight. We have another gear to get into defensively, and he's just going to keep knocking that into them. And the other thing is, I feel like if Laviolette walks in that locker room and asks for a lockdown period, he's going to get one. The past 2 years, it's like even when they did have the lead in the third or something like that, they still would let the other team threaten a little too much. That just hasn't been the case so far. Now, like I keep saying, there's going to be games this year where they don't look great and all those things, but just the fact that they've shown improvement from the past 2 years is huge. And like I said, I just think once they're fully acclimated to the system and they're completely comfortable, I think they can beat anybody pretty comfortably.
I'll throw this out there because you mentioned it with Peter Laviolette being able to really get a lot more out of them than we've seen in the past, and third periods not being complete fire drills for Shesterkin. I can't remember a time where the Rangers had played a full 60-minute game. And now they're not playing not to lose, which is just what it felt like what the coaching philosophy, of Gallant was. It was get a lead and then completely turtle. The Rangers will have leads now in the end of games, and they're still pressing. And it could definitely be from the 1-3-1. They're not afraid to, 5 minutes left in a game, you have a 2-goal lead, keep firing it on, keep pressing in the offensive zone, keep being aggressive. And that's the thing. There have been so many times where they just turtle, and you can easily see from last year, it doesn't work. You can't... You can look across every sport in North America. Playing to not lose very, very rarely works. You have to continue to put your foot on the throttle. Also, I've gone back to 2007-8. I can't find a time where the Rangers face-off was ever over 52%. The last time it was over 50 was 2012-13 when John Tortorella was our head coach. And I'm done searching. It's 53 right now.
And by the way, the stat that I was talking about was that it was literally the only time it was very early on 2019. It's not like they've been over that for a season.
Nope.
It wore off pretty quick. So
guys, it was coming when the last time the Rangers had a face-off over 53% would have had to have been for a full season. Would have had to have been before Drury was even a captain for this team. I'm not going to go back to find out who led the team in face-off percentage in 1942 so I can get the proper number. This is not what they have done normally. And
that's all we need to know. So I mean, obviously a lot of this it just boils down to coaching. I've when we came on here, I don't think we were super beyond thrilled about Laviolette. Obviously there was a lot of optimism there, but I've been pleasantly surprised with the entire coaching staff so far. I think the first year under Gallant, it was obviously very hands-off, and I think the players liked that for a year, and it just wore off, and it didn't work. And now they have a coach that has been...
It was the
he's
start
obviously
of Home Alone.
He's... they liked it, and that's all the players were talking about is, Gallant is a coach that's going to give you a lot of freedom and everything, and we've seen that does not work. It very quickly wore out its welcome, and I'm just excited for them to be fully adjusted into this. I mean, especially because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think they were capable of playing like this early, just because you'd expect a team to struggle a little bit learning a new system. So the fact that they're showing this already, and we're in October, is very, very nice.
I'm gonna throw a question out there. Actually, I'll throw two questions. One, I think Vincent Trocheck has not gotten the appreciation he probably should. I think he's looked very solid on the third line. And I just saw that because, holy shit, his face-off percentage is 59%, which... that is unbelievable. Also on the third line, to get one brief bit of that it isn't all sunshine and rainbows, Blake Wheeler.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Listen, he's making it at $800K, right? So there's really not a whole lot that he can do to make it a bad signing.
Right.
Um, he hasn't necessarily negatively impacted the team, but he certainly hasn't impressed.
He's just
And
kind of been there.
yeah, I'd assume he's going to get rolling at some point. I will say, although he hasn't been impressive, I think he has complemented that line pretty well. I don't know if you agree with that. I just think he has played decently on that line for the most part. My main complaints about him are just the fact that he definitely looks 37,
Yep.
for sure. And I think he's still pretty good along the boards. It's just that I'm confident that I could beat him to a puck.
Yep.
Like, I'm just, that's just how it is. Like I said, I think he will get comfortable at some point. Hopefully, it's sooner rather than later. Like I said, he hasn't been a disaster. It's not like he's made terrible plays or anything. It's just when you're watching him, like I said, he definitely looks 37 for sure. So that's really the main thing. He's really been the only outlier in a negative way,
Yeah.
and if that's the case, I really have no true complaints. I mean, listen, if he scores 25 points, is a good signing.
Yeah.
I mean, even like it's 800K, guys. So and now the one thing I will say, I've already seen people talking about bringing up Brennan Othman. I am completely not on that train, or at least not yet.
I would like
Brennan
to
Othman
not
has
rush a prospect for once.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this. Like, I think he's. Obviously, not that I've watched the Hartford Wolfpack so far, but I have seen he had a couple goals in one of the games. So far, apparently, he's looked great down there. I just think if you throw him into this too quickly, you could ruin his confidence. And we have had a lot of trouble developing prospects lately. So
Whoever could you be talking about, Evan?
I mean, if you want to listen, if you want to give it 20 games of Blake Wheeler and give Brennan Othman like at least 20 games to just get confident with the puck at a professional level, I'm cool with bringing him up. But I'm not on board with this, very quick to react call up for no reason.
Yeah.
Let him get comfortable. Listen, Brennan Othman is not. Now, this is not a knock on him. I would obviously love it if he was, but he is not a top tier prospect, guys. He's not. I think he was picked like 15th. It's not like we have like a Connor Bedard here. He wouldn't even be on the same tier as like Matty Beniers. He's not. He's still a great player. He has a lot of upside, but it's not like he's just going to instantly feel comfortable in this league, especially because, I mean, we've talked about it before. He, for some reason with the NHL rules, he wasn't allowed to play in the AHL last year, so he had to go back to a league that he was already way better than everyone else in, and it was a wasted development year. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. He scored a whole lot of points. And also, he wasn't trying from the reports I've seen, very understandably so, because it's literally like being in 8th grade and being told that you either have to go to college or go back to 8th grade. There's no high school. That's what this is right now. So let him get comfortable in the AHL. I don't even know if they've played 5 games in Hartford yet. They might be at 2 or 3. So let him have some time with first line minutes down there. Then you can call him up if Blake Wheeler still doesn't look good. But if you're just gonna throw this kid into the fire, that is not a great idea. Especially we've all complained about how they've rushed prospects and they're not good at developing prospects. Guys, do not be too quick to react on this. It would be a very dumb decision.
Here's where I'm at with the Brendan Othman thing. I agree greatly that we have seen. We are finally starting to celebrate the fact that Capo Caco, Philip Hedl, and Alexis Lafreniere look like NHL players in their 7th, 5th, and 4th season. That, these top-tier prospects, especially Caco and Laf, finally look like adequate NHL players. And it has been a revelation. I don't want to go through this again because Othman is not that level of prospect. Now, my excitement for Othman is I think he's going to be a similar-ish player to a Vincent Trocheck in the sense of he is going to be a third line guy. I think you let Blake Wheeler ride this entire season regardless, because if he is your worst player, you're golden. If he's your worst player, you're making noise in the postseason. You have to remember, in years past, our worst player has been guys like Libor Hayek. If this is your bottom of the barrel guy, you're great. That's wonderful. Because he's not made an impact. He hasn't looked great. I think that third line has rolled too well not to get going. I think Trocheck and Cooley has been very... Cooley?
Cooley, yeah.
Yeah, it is Cooley. He looks solid. That line's going to get moving. I think next year, Trocheck with Othman and maybe Cooley, I think that's going to be a really fun pain in the ass to play against. Don't rush what could be a good 20 to 25 goal scorer at this league by rushing him up when he is very not ready. I think that is just... We've seen that happen too many times. And I'm not even saying that Lafreniere shouldn't have been put into the league his first year, because you're the first overall pick. That is 99% of the time what happens, is you just immediately debut, unless you're like a goaltender or a defenseman. You don't have to look far. And this team is not in need of a jumpstart. That's another thing. Because in past years, it's, call up this prospect because the team is floundering and you need something to try to get someone going. They look good. They've won a lot of games. The guys that you need to play well to make your team play well are doing that. Panarin has looked good. The first line has looked really good. Kreider is going to score 90 goals again. It looks fantastic. You don't need to do that. You can take your time and let things go as is. Especially right now, I know it's 6 games. You lead the Metro. You just
or at least tied for it. Yeah.
Don't if you make a good meal, don't start adding to it. Don't have this fear of like, but how good could we? No. You're 4-2. The only times you lost were when you were incredibly hungover and playing a game against a team that played pretty over their head in Columbus. Don't.
Yeah, and like I said, with Othman, it's like, listen, if he ends up becoming Artemi Panarin, I'm not going to complain. I'm not trying to knock him to any extent. But like I said, last year was a completely wasted development year for him. And with all that being said, I thought he looked great in the preseason. Cool. Don't call him up yet. I want him to be in the AHL for at least 20 games. Like I said, it's not like this is a Logan Cooley or Matty Beniers or Connor Bedard, anything like that. It's going to take some time, especially if you're winning right now. And everything you just said, there's no reason to... I mean, people were rioting about Blake Wheeler on Twitter in a game that the Rangers won, and he literally did nothing wrong. So, like you just said, nothing is wrong right now, especially... Like we keep saying, all the lines look good right now. It doesn't matter if Blake Wheeler's scoring on the third line or not. The third line looks good, so don't change it. I don't care who's getting the goals on it. I don't care anything like that. They've been defensively responsible. The goals are going to come for them. Just don't change anything. That is the only quote-unquote complaint that you could currently have about this team right now is Blake Wheeler, and he hasn't even played 10 games and for his new team yet, and he's 37. And he played in Winnipeg his whole career, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment period. And when we're talking about playoffs and everything like that, you're going to want guys that have been there and done that before, and not to... Obviously, we just traded for Tarasenko and Kane, and that didn't work. I'm not saying it's that easy, but I would much rather have Blake Wheeler in the playoffs, assuming he gets comfortable in the regular season, rather than calling up Brendan Othman now and having him have to adjust on the fly and not be ready, and have him most likely not be ready when it is time for the playoffs. It's very irresponsible. Listen, the floor of this team is third in the Metro. It's that simple. So you don't have to go and make all these crazy, it just out of instinct adjustments, and Drury is too smart to do that. I honestly think if they were going to do that, Brendan Othman just would have made the opening night lineup. I think the fact that he didn't shows that they're just going to let him play in Hartford. Just because he looked great in the preseason. If this team was dumb enough to rush him, it would have happened already, I feel like. So, like we just said, our only complaint right now is that Blake Wheeler hasn't scored 10 goals, I guess. I don't know. That's really the only thing. Yeah, and with him specifically, and I feel like obviously the top six has looked great skillfully. The bottom six has been terrific, defensively and on the penalty kill. And we talked about it the last episode too, but I mean the penalty kill looks just ridiculously good right now. I mean I have not really felt worried to any extent when the Rangers are on the penalty kill. Obviously, you'd prefer them to not take penalties, but I just think going back to this system and everything like that, like these guys, especially being that your entire bottom six is tried and true and veterans in this league at doing that. I have no complaints right now. Like truly, obviously they could put up a stinker tomorrow in Edmonton, and who knows? But it's just like what we've seen so far is just something that we haven't seen in at least 3 years, guys. So I'm not. I'm really not complaining about much right now.
I agree. I think the system you have is perfect. There is no reason to tinker with anything. The lines look good. The top six do what they need to do, and they score goals. The bottom six are a hell to play against. Trocheck had possibly the most Italian fight I have ever watched in the NHL in that game.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
That was
and to touch on him a little bit, like you said before, I think he's looked fantastic, and I think before the season we were even talking about he's almost like a perfect third line center. Mm-hmm. I think that's obviously he might be making a little too much money than you would like, but I mean so is just about half of the roster of every NHL team. So I'm not complaining. Like I keep saying, like the floor of this team is third in the Metro. And I guess just to talk about a couple things, like guys, the Canes have looked not great. The Devils are still pretty good. By the way, they're losing 2-0 to Washington right now, which is interesting.
It was 1-0 like 2 seconds ago.
The Canes have looked bad. And by the way, looking at the Canes lineup on paper, like I'm not moved by it necessarily. Obviously, it's very early. I'm not trying to sit here and say the Canes won't make the playoffs, but I think they have taken a step back. Listen, they haven't looked good defensively, and that's like their bread and butter. That's like supposed to be their identity. And Brendan Lemieux is playing hockey games for them. Huh? So I think that's weird. Yeah. By the way, now this is going way off topic, but I don't know if you saw when the Canes played Seattle, there was one of the Kraken players was down on the ice getting up, like he was on his knees trying to get up, and Brendan Lemieux took a headshot on him. While the puck was nowhere near either one of them, and he hit him in the head. I listen. And honestly, watching the replay back, it. Oh really? Oh my God! Wow. Yeah. So, like I was saying, Brendan Lemieux, he's been a very dirty player for some time now. So I don't know why he wasn't suspended. This is going way off topic, by the way. But I think the fact that he is on the roster is strange. Just because I feel like the past few years I've looked at the Canes lineup and I've been like, this is terrifying. Not that they've had, superstar teams or anything. I just think this is the first year where they haven't looked as complete on paper, and it's translated on the ice. Obviously, they've won games so far, and it's very early on. But I think right now it's us and the Devils who are, like you said, losing 3-0. Not that matters at all, but just as we're currently watching this. Shout out to the guy with the Rangers sign, by the way, that we mentioned very early on. Yeah. So I guess to talk about like everything, I obviously the Devils have had some good games. We've had some great games too. The Pittsburgh Penguins look very bad. The floor of this team is, no matter which way you slice it, it's third in the Metro, and they've looked vastly improved from last year. I just keep rolling, just 100% keep rolling. I guess we'll talk about tomorrow a little bit. They play Edmonton at 9 o'clock, which is a little bit earlier than what we've
Yay.
experienced past few games. Not ideal, but it's a little bit of an improvement. Back to 10 o'clock on Saturday against the Canucks, by the way. But
Kill me.
anyway, Connor McDavid is not playing tomorrow.
God is a Rangers
Guys,
fan.
yeah, guys, win the game. Like, please. By the way, has Igor ever played against Connor McDavid?
I don't think he has.
I was kind of excited for that, but I guess it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Yeah, he's not playing. Obviously, Draisaitl's still. I mean, he's put up like damn near
He's
the
a
same numbers as
really
Connor
close
McDavid.
number 2 for this league.
Yeah,
It's
so
not that far.
not to make it seem like he's their only chance of winning, because he's clearly not. But like, I mean, come on, you have to win that game, guys. You just have to.
For me, it's not the fact that they're missing McDavid. It's the fact that you're gonna get either Stuart Skinner or Jack Campbell.
Yeah, so
I am
score some
pleading
goals
with
for
you.
sure. Yeah, yeah. I think the one thing is, like, when we're talking about the penalty kill and how good they've been, I think the only way that they would get just torched is obviously against the Oilers power play with Connor McDavid. And at that point, you can't complain. Like, nobody can stop them. But the fact that they lose literally the best player of our generation, I think that helps quite a bit. So
That one might
with the
say that's
expectations with the expectations that we currently have for how they should be playing and how they've shown they can play, win the game. It's that simple. You should be able to score some goals. Their goalies are not great, to put it lightly. They just win the game, and then obviously 10 o'clock against the Vancouver Canucks, who I don't think have been bad this year, but still win the game. And then we have, I think, a 7 o'clock game against the Winnipeg Jets on Monday. So
Oh.
we're back. We're
Isn't
back
that
to
beautiful to see? Not 10 p.m.
yeah. So obviously things have been great so far. It's very early on in the season, but I not that tomorrow's like a must win or anything. We haven't even played 10 games, but I do think if you put up a stinker, that'll definitely change a lot of my mindset. But we'll see what happens. I mean, nothing that can happen at this stage of the season is season ending, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, like I said, I truly don't have any complaints, especially, the worst game they played is obviously against Nashville, and the team themselves were like disgusted at themselves after, and they fixed it. So like, nothing I could say about that game hasn't been fixed. So there's really no point in even talking about it.
All I'm saying is, if the team would have participated in Sober October, the Rangers would be 5-1. Like it's as simple as that, guys.
Yeah, it's definitely as simple as that. Yeah, and I mean, I guess just for like a season outlook, I think it definitely helps that the Penguins are exactly what we expected them to be. For some reason, I saw a lot of Penguins fans and people saying that they're back before the season, and I'm very happy that they're not, because listen, I mean, even if they proved us wrong and they were, that would have complicated things quite a bit for us. Yeah, they're not making the playoffs. They're not. So that helps. The Flyers are obviously, they've been good so far. They're not making the playoffs either. The Capitals are a little interesting. Obviously, they're winning 3-0 as we speak, but like, they've looked just lifeless. From what I've seen, Ovi looks like a shell of himself, and they just don't look great. I mean, not that they're gonna bottom out or anything, but I'm not in the slightest concern about the Washington Capitals. And you've proven you could beat the Canes before quite a few times, and they look worse this year. So it's just us and the Devils right now. So we'll see how obviously things shake out. I almost want to see a clean sweep of wins the rest of the way for this road trip, to be honest with you. I think that would be a huge statement, especially because, I mean, the Devils are going to get theirs this year. They were a great regular season team last year. They're not really a team that's gonna. I don't see them just getting blown out by the teams like the Canadians or anything super often. So it's not. I really don't see them having just like a random 7-game losing streak in the middle of the season. The reason I'm mentioning that is just because I want to get off to a hot start, because I feel like if you fall too far behind the Devils, they're not going to really let you catch up, because they're just going to win the games they should, and that's just how it's going to be the rest of the year. Obviously, we don't play them for quite some time, and I mentioned this on the last episode too, like it's a little disappointing that we don't really have, a measuring stick game for a little bit. I think it's actually creeping up on us pretty quick, the Carolina game. I think that's like
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of November-ish. So I guess
Yeah.
that'll be, a true test, but it's like that's really the only thing, is just a matter of, I mean, they haven't played a game against like an important game so far against, yes, I'm looking at it,
Yeah,
November
November
2nd
2nd.
against the Canes.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's really where where we're gonna kind of see how we measure up against them, and then the Devils is the 18th of November.
Okay.
So we'll see
Now,
what happens in those, but everything outside of that is just like we're playing teams that I don't care about.
yeah.
So
I'll also throw this in there with you discussing the fact that getting potentially a clean sweep on this road trip, how massive that would be. It's also, you have to think about it like this. The Rangers are going to play 7 of their 41 total road games in the first 9 games. If you can go on the road here and win 5 of them in a row, if you can take 4 of the 5, I don't think that is too big of an ask. If you because I think you can win 2 of Edmonton, Vancouver, and the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
Starting out with that as your big nightmarish road trip, because the other big road trip cluster that I see is going to be New Jersey, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and Flyers. And yeah, that's a pain in the ass to go on the road for 4 games, but Jersey isn't bad. Dallas is a ways out, but then Pittsburgh and Flyers, that's not a crazy amount of travel. This is your real nightmarish trip of the season, and if you can finish that off 4-1 to start the year, where you're just starting to get into stride with each other and just starting to figure out the system, that would be unmeasurable how much good that would do for the team to start with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we're talking about all that, obviously the Rangers have been a great road team the past few years, and they've obviously been great on the road so far this year. So being that you kind of get your, like you said, just the terrible road trip out of the way, if you could get most of the points out of this, that's massive, because obviously assuming you continue the success on the road the rest of the way, and none of the other road games are really going to be this much of a pain in the ass, that would be absolutely huge. And the one other thing I just want to finish off with is, obviously last year, the Rangers were, well, I believe they were like the worst team in the league in December, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they were bad in December, and they weren't really great to start the year either. They had quite a long stretch of just being completely awful. And they still came pretty close of winning the division. So if you can avoid that, especially now that we're talking about, obviously, the Canes not looking as great and everything, and you've proven you could beat them, I'm almost expecting you to win the Metro. Assuming that you don't have like a 3-win month again, you definitely should at least be second in this division for sure. Because I mean, last year it was like we were ready to tear things down before the Trouba helmet throw. So it
Good
was bad
days.
for some time, and they clawed back, and I don't remember the exact point totals of the top 3, but I think we were like, I mean, no more than like 5 points out of the division, or
That
somewhere
sounds
right
about
around
right.
there. But all things considered, like I said, as long as you don't have that bad of a month, you should be very, very well in the mix for things. So, obviously, like we said, not a whole lot of complaints here. The one bad game was because everybody was dressed up like Chewbacca and got drunk. So, I'm not really complaining about anything yet. Obviously, no McDavid tomorrow. I would really, really appreciate a clean sweep for the rest of this road trip, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think everything that needs to be said has been said. I think it's just get 4 of the 5. Hopefully you can get the win tomorrow without McDavid. That would be very nice, especially when you're probably going to see the Soup Man. But
Yeah.
I think we've said our piece. I know at least I'm content, and I feel good
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
So, yeah, we'll have 3 games. Probably be back Tuesday after they finish off the road trip, or about there.
Yeah, that sounds good, yeah.
Yeah. But until then, thank you all so very much for coming to the 15th episode of the Rangers Gameplan podcast. Until next time, thank you so very much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day, and go Rangers.
Yep, thanks guys, go Rangers.